Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am going to recommend some fairy tale retellings. So recently on one of my videos, someone requested that I let them know what the best fairy tale retellings were, and I decided after looking at this comment for a long time that I was going to have to do a video recommending a specific genre very soon in the future, and why not start with one of my absolute favorites. I've always loved fairy tale retellings, and I think they're really fabulous, whether they're really lighthearted or whether they're taken really seriously, and so I have read a lot. However, you will notice that this video is void of most of the new and very famous retellings that I have not read yet. I have not read A Court of Thorns and Roses, I have not read The Wrath and the Dawn, and I have not read any of the Lunar Chronicles, which I know I need to read all of them, but it just means that in the future I will have to do another one of these videos as an update of new ones that I've read. So we're just gonna jump in and I'm gonna show you my favorite fairy tale retelling. So first up, I'm going to talk about a series, sort of, and that is the Once Upon a Time books. These books are written by a lot of different authors, but they're really fun. They are not high literature. They are very short, very quick young adult books that are just simple retellings. I have not read all of these, but I have read a couple, and I will show you a couple of my favorites. So first up we have The Storyteller's Daughter by Cameron Doke. Most of the Once Upon a Time books that I've read are by Cameron Doke. This is a retelling of the Arabian Nights, and I just finished it last night because I ended up reading it in preparation for this video, and this is really fun, light, and it has really excellent storytelling. A couple others that I've read and enjoyed, those are Golden, also by Cameron Doke, and Snow by Tracy Lynn. This is a retelling of Rapunzel, and this is a retelling of Snow White, and they're both pretty good. I really enjoyed both of these, and I read them really quickly. My other favorite from the series is definitely Wild Orchid, also by Cameron Doke. Besides the obviously problematic casting of the model for the cover, this is a really excellent one, and honestly, I read a few different retellings of The Ballad of Mulan, and this is probably my favorite. I know I need to read some thicker ones and some different ones, but this is a really good retelling of The Ballad of Mulan. The next thing I want to mention is that authors who do retellings or who write retellings, often they do more than one. And the next one that I'm going to talk about is Gail Carson Levine. I adore Gail Carson Levine. I think she writes really great fantasy. I just really enjoy it. And I have not read all of her books, but I have a couple here to show you. So the first of those is Fairest, which is a retelling again of Snow White. Fairest is really good. It's a bit thicker than some of Gail Carson Levine's other books, but it's really well written, it's really nice. It's a fairy tale retelling, so obviously it's pretty upbeat and happy overall. It's just a fluffy read, and this one is really great. And next, this is actually my favorite retelling of all time. I've read this so many times, and that is Ella Enchanted. Ella Enchanted is a retelling of Cinderella, and obviously it is the winner of a Newbery honor. I've read this book so many times because in this book, Ella does have stepsisters, and she has an awful stepmother, but she was cursed when she was younger that she would have to obey any command given to her. And so, no matter what her sisters or her stepmother tell her to do, she has to do it, and she has to sort of fight against this. Prince Charming in this, Char, is amazing. It's so cute, and I think that this one has such a wonderful, serious undercurrent to it, and Ella's struggles are just, I adore this book. This is one of my absolute favorites. If you haven't read it, please read Ella Enchanted. Please. Next up, I wanted to mention Shannon Hale. Shannon Hale writes fairy tale retellings of lesser-known fairy tales. Both of the ones I'm going to show you are retellings of Grimm fairy tales that I hadn't even heard of, but are really fabulous books. The first of those is The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale, which is a retelling of the Grimm tale of the same name. I have not read the original tale, but I've read this whole series. This is the only one that's based on a fairy tale, and it is amazing. There is magic, there are wonderful female characters. Shannon Hale is excellent at writing really complex women, and I absolutely love The Goose Girl. Next up is Book of a Thousand Days. This is a retelling of another lesser-known grim tale called Maid Maleen, but it has been altered with Asian themes, and it is just amazing. This is my favorite Shannon Hale book because the two lead characters in this are absolutely incredible. The lead character, the main girl, is especially wonderfully well written, but it is just, it has some darker elements to it, but it also is just an absolutely beautiful book. Next, I'm going to talk about a series by one of my favorite authors who doesn't usually write retellings. She usually sticks to science fiction or thrillers, but she wrote these two books and they're absolutely amazing, and those are Just Ella and Palace of Mirrors. Just Ella is a book that takes place immediately after the events of the Cinderella story, where Ella has married her Prince Charming, but as it turns out, she rushed into it, and Prince Charming is unbearably dull, and she misses not her old life, but she feels really confined. And it is a really, really great book. I love Margaret Peterson Haddix. And then Palace of Mirrors isn't a retelling, but it just happens to take place in the same world as Just Ella, and some of the same characters appear. And you should read this because the lead character is named Cecilia. It is one of the only books I've ever read with a lead character named Cecilia. But overall, this is just a really fun series. Next book I want to talk about is Reckless by Cornelia Funke. Reckless is not a retelling of a specific fairy tale, but more an amalgamation of a lot of different Grimm's fairy tales. This book is about two brothers, one of which has always been able to escape to the mirror world, which is sort of a fantasy world, and then one day his younger brother follows him, and they go on these crazy adventures to get from one end of the mirror world to the other, and they meet all of these fantasy creatures, but all of the different people within Mirror World are part of retellings of stories. And this is probably the darkest book that I have on this stack because it has given all of the fairy tales a very dark twist, and the story is overall quite dark. This is the first book in a series, but I have not yet read the second book. But, I mean, it's Cornelia Funke, so obviously I have to love it. It's amazing. The next one I'm going to talk about is one of my absolute favorites of all time as well, and that is East by Edith Petu, I believe. This is also called North Child, where it's published in some other countries. This is a retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which is actually a Norwegian folktale. But this folktale is very similar to Beauty and the Beast. There are some differences, but when I read this when I was younger, I wasn't aware of what it was a retelling of, and I thought it was a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. The prose in this is gorgeous. The descriptions are amazing, and it's overall just a really fantastic young adult high fantasy book. It's a lot thicker than a lot of the other ones I've recommended, and it has just stuck with me for so many years because I think East is really fantastic in developing the relationship between the girl who is living at this castle with an actual bear. Their relationship is developed more than I think some of the other Beauty and the Beast-esque retellings are. I know this is East of the Sun, West of the Moon, but sort of where you start to feel like it might be a bit Stockholm Syndrome-y. I think that this escapes that kind of spin on it. And it's just an absolutely gorgeous book. It has really detailed descriptions and storytelling, and I absolutely adore it. And the last author and series of books that I'm going to talk about today are the books by Alex Flynn. Alex Flynn is a fantastic author in general. I've read a couple of her other books, but her retellings are absolutely fantastic. I have not read all of them yet. I know that there are a couple out there that I haven't read yet that I desperately want to read, but I read all 4 of the ones I have here a couple of years ago, and they've just totally stuck with me as being some of the best retellings that I've read. First up, we have A Kiss in Time. This is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. It is told from 2 different perspectives, and this one is really interesting because it is Sleeping Beauty if she slept for so long that when she was finally awoken by a boy, it is within our modern world. And so she sort of has to deal with the fact that it is now a modern world and no one knows her kingdom existed, and it is just a really fun book, and both of the narrators are they're really funny and fun to listen to. Next up, I have Cloaked. Cloaked is a retelling also of a lot of different fairy tales, but this one definitely does focus on the Frog Prince. That is a main part of this book. However, there are a lot of different fairy tales going on all at once. This is a really fun book. It is not my favorite of all of Alex Flynn's, but it is great and full of magic. I just had a really good time reading this book. Next up, I have Bewitching. Bewitching is, if you've read some of her other books, it is about the witch who sort of runs through all of the different tales and sort of her experiences. At its heart, this is a retelling of Hansel and Gretel, but because she's a witch, there are a lot of other side stories going on, and she's present in a lot of other fairy tales. I think this is cool because it gives a bit of a background into a character you could consider the antagonist in some of her other books, and it made it much more fun to reread the other books in the series because you know a lot more about her now. And finally, this is definitely the most famous of her books. I have Beastly. Beastly is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. It is a movie. Not a good movie, but it is a movie, and this is really interesting also. This is definitely my favorite. I think that the love story is really fabulous, despite the fact that it has the problem that all Beauty and the Beast retellings have, where you're kind of like, alright, I get love, but like, it's kind of creepy, because he just kidnapped her. Anyway, I believe Lindy's her name. I think Lindy is a really cool character, and I think that she's a very good, like, modern representation of Belle. I also really like Adrian, because I think he is a more layered beast. Plus, what this book has going for it is really excellent side characters who also have a plot. Overall, this is just one of my absolute favorites. I love Beastly. Hate the movie, but Beastly is a really fantastic retelling. Alright, those are all the retellings I have to recommend to you. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about them. If you guys have favorite retellings, I know that I have some very glaring gaps in my list, but if there are ones that you feel that I truly need to read, then please leave them below. I know that I'm missing some of the bigger names like Robin McKinley. I hope that you found a couple new books to read and add to your TBR. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!